working hours, I wasn't with my mother. I was in the community. I wasn't with my mother, but my husband had his mother in the home as a stay-at-home mom. So it's a very different experience of your value in the home with the child. Because even though our mother loved us, my mother was not at home with me. My mother was working.
She had to provide.
Right.
But like you said, like you made a great point, and I hope I didn't lose it. It's like, okay, so a lot of us, we don't grow up seeing a functional relationship with both parties in the home. So how do we know how to behave?
Right.
People don't understand that. Like I never seen a relationship in the home. So how do I know how to behave as a man inside the home? I know what I'm supposed to be doing outside the home. I know I'm supposed to bring home the bacon and do all that. But like, I mean, living with a woman who did everything, I know how to cook very well, clean very well, sew, iron. I know how to take trash out. I know how to do certain things, but behavior, I don't know how to behave because I haven't
don't
seen
know how to be in a relationship.
Exactly, because it's like I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
You know? So
I know how to be in the space, but not really engaged.
Exactly.
Because
I'm used to. Because again, being left alone a lot, I'd rather be left alone still until I'm ready to be social. And I think that's why I'm so rambunctious at times when I'm out, is because it's like, finally I can be around human beings and not feel like, and my friends say all the time, like, bro, how you don't call nobody, you don't write, like, can't get a postcard, you don't, like, what's up, man? And I had to tell them, my mother and father said, I told them this too. I said, it's nothing intentional, but being raised the way I did, I'm conditioned to be alone. It's nothing against you.
Come on.
It's nothing against you.
I knew he was gonna bring it back. I knew he was gonna bring it back around. Because this goes into the malice of matriarchy. Because when you say that from a male perspective. So sometimes we would think that, oh, okay, and even men more so than women, that isolation. Even though we know research tells us that it's very dangerous to be alone. Isolation by itself brings great detriment to our health. But as a woman, I went from talking to my mother every day to now maybe we talk maybe every 2 weeks or so.
Wow.
And, my mom said to me, oh, I'm feeling some type of way because we're not talking much, like we used to. And, we're having these conversations, which I was grateful to her for saying that because, it was like, okay, yeah, we're going to be in this space where we telling the truth and we talking about our emotions, then you need to be able to say that,
and
but
that's what you want.
Yes. But I had that same reaction that you had, is that I didn't do it intentionally. It's like, I'm not doing this intentionally. I'm just conditioned because I was the good child. I also had who had challenges than I did. And so nobody ever really, it's not that people would say, hey, how you doing? But as far as my emotions, nobody checked on me as far as my emotions. It's like, I'm doing, nobody really checked. So it's like, now that even if you want it, how do you receive it? Receive it. It's something that you actually want, but I'm not used to receiving it, so it's not on my mind really reaching out. Now it is, now that I'm healing and stuff, but you still have to come out of that. It's like, well, nobody really checked on me as far as how do I feel or what are my emotions, or not everything looks good.
So how do I in turn know to do that?
Yeah, so it's like, I learned how to live that way from such a young age. It's like, if I was having a crisis, somebody would check on me, but otherwise, it's like she's doing everything she's supposed to be doing, so she must be good.
So she must be good. I wasn't. It's the same for me, and it's like I went through phases of like missing my parents, then being mad at my parents, than being numb and not caring. And I told them that. Like, I'm like, y'all kind of, I'm conditioned. Like, I went from missing you so much and being so in so much pain of not having y'all to slowly but surely learning to live without you and masking that with anger and resentment to the point where I feel nothing. So today, as a grown man, I don't think to pick up the phone because I had to train myself not to think about y'all.
Not to want it.
Not exactly, absolutely. But when I get around my dad, when my dad comes around, I don't leave his side. I talk to him the entire time. Like, my daughter's birthday was last month. He came to the party. You would have thought it was just me and him at the park kicking it because the party's over there, and I'm so engaged in the conversation with him, and he in turn is also. He was engaged in welcoming it because I think something in his mind knows, like, I'm excited to see my son because we don't talk often, but in person we talk. Right. So it's like, I think in ways you gotta like break it like that sometime. Like, okay, I'm not gonna pick up the phone, but let's plan dates to see each other in person and have it. Because on my everyday life, I'm not gonna pick up the phone and call because I'm just conditioned. The way life has been set up and what has happened throughout the course of time, I'm oblivious to picking up the phone and say, oh, you know what? Let me call Pop and see how he's doing. Let me call Mom, see how she's doing. It's not because I don't love y'all. It's just I've trained myself not to, like you said, not to want it.
You want it, but it's like, like you said, it's like that stuffing down that childhood.
The little boy wants it, but the adult doesn't.
Feeling of, hey, man, time with my kids. Like, I really want to spend time with, as a kid, I really want to spend time with my parents, but they're not available for whatever reason. And so in order to numb that pain, I have to pretend like I don't want it. I have to pretend like I don't want it. And I pretend so much that now I'm actually conditioned to, when you see me, and this is a lesson for the parents, I believe, right now, especially our teenagers now. It's like, because you can be seeing them on their headphones or in their phones and doing that stuff in time with you, when deep down they really do. They just been conditioned that mama and daddy, they too busy. They got this going on, they got that going on, and maybe it can seem like they don't want to connect, but they just don't know how to because they wanted to,
but they don't know how.
But it had to suppress that, and now you don't know how to communicate that.
Absolutely, because I think, like, speaking to teens, it's like I think our teenage years are our most fragile years. Man. Because you're in the transition. I think that's the biggest transitional phase of life is those teenage years. And that can make or break the rest of your life. So it's like, I'm 40 years old. The adult doesn't want it, but the little boy that's inside of me, that we all have a little boy or a little girl, the little boy wants it. So that's why when I see my dad, it's like the little boy takes over. Like, oh, it's Dad. Go kick it with Dad. Let me tell him all the things that I've been doing. Like, Dad, I'm writing books. Dad, I'm working here. Dad, I'm doing this, Pop. I took the kids here. That's the little boy, the excitement. But after the encounter, the adult takes back over. And,
back to business.
Absolutely. So. And that's all through our conditioning and the environment that was created for us and how we adapted to it and what coping mechanisms that we created for ourselves to adjust and live and become who we are.
Absolutely. This is a great conversation. I'm loving it.
Now, it's always dope.
Listen, thank you so much for joining me today, for talking about the Malice of Matriarchy. I appreciate the value that you added, your perspective from being raised by both your mother and your great-grandmother and how that affected you as a son. I definitely wanted to speak on that from a female perspective, from a daughter, but to have you come in as a son and speak on that. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
You got any final words for the people?
Just one quick thing where it's like, To the men that are listening, like, just understand, if you were raised in a single parent household, and it's your mom that's been controlling everything, before you resent her, try to process and understand her plight before you resent her, because what they go through, to no fault of their own, is what shaped them. So start having conversations, start asking questions before you might say, "Oh, my mom is mean," or "My grandmother was this way, this, that way." Understand that there's a series of events that have happened in their lives to shape who they are as a person. And they were conditioned to bottle that up for children not to see. So it's not that they don't love you, it's just the resentment of the assignment that they have. And with that, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure as always. If anybody wants to reach out to me, it's DB Jacob on Facebook and Instagram. Good Grief. If you want to get your copy of that, Trapped Behind Enemy Lines, y'all got to check out my homie, my dog's chapter, Malice of Matriarchy, because it's fire and it's going to put a lot of things in perspective for you. T, thank you. I appreciate you for this platform and giving me the opportunity to share.
Absolutely. This conversation is going to heal a lot of relationships. It's going to bring some perspective to both the men and the women, the boys and the girls.
Absolutely.
And I think they're going to come out of this conversation. So, sir, I will return your day back to you.
Thank you so much, T. Talk to you soon.
Wow. That was an amazing conversation that I had with Mr. Donnie B. Reed about the malice of matriarchy. And I hope that you enjoyed that conversation just as much as I did. I hope that you learned something, that you were educated, empowered, and enlightened by that conversation that we had about those different things that show up generationally as mothers, as women, as we're parenting children. We don't heal from our pain, from our trauma, from our emotions, when we don't take that time to heal. So much was talked about, so much was unpacked. And I just want to take this time to do a recap and reflection of those things that we have learned for the past month. We're talking about the Malice of Matriarchy, and this is the story right in the two-time best-selling book, an international best-selling book, Trapped Behind Enemy Lines in My Mind. Our definition of malice. What is malice? Malice is the desire to inflict injury, harm, or suffering on another, either because of hostile impulse or out of deep-seated meanness. And the definition of matriarchy is a family, society, community, or state governed by women. So when we talk about the malice of matriarchy, we're talking about how our family, society, community, our states, how these institutions are affected when we don't heal from those emotional scars and that trauma that we've had in the past, in our personal lives or generationally. So just looking at that and how that transpires. In part one of Malice of Matriarchy and that conversation with me and Donnie, one of the things that we brought up was when we do not heal emotionally as women and mothers, once again, we pass down unhealthy behaviors to our children that we express due to pain, hurt, and unforgiveness. And so some of the ways that can show up is in sarcasm, in belittling, anger, yelling, self-hatred. These are all of those things that can manifest towards our children, our husbands, our spouses, those who we are in community with. And a lot of times when those emotions are buried, we're not aware of them. They're not in our conscious mind. We don't know why we're doing it. And so we definitely want to bring some awareness to that. So with the reflections, what I would recommend is for you to journal. Like a lot of the things that we talked about were very heavy. And if you're hearing it for the first time, taking it in, absorbing it, if you're a person who's ready to start digging a little bit deeper, you know that you've been affected by the things that we talked about. When it comes to the reflections are more like a journal prompt. So I would recommend that you grab pen, grab paper, and seriously sit down and think about these questions. These questions, they're going to open up a lot of emotions and make you think about some things that you may not have thought about before, but it's going to help you get to the root of why you are behaving, thinking, and feeling the way they're feeling in regards to some of these things that we talked about, how you may be showing up as a wife, how you may be showing up as a mother. And even as we said during our conversations, our men are affected too, because we have so much influence, whether the man, the father is in the home or in the life of the child or not, the children are very heavily influenced by the mother most of the time. So even for our men, this will uncover some of those emotions, some of those thoughts, behaviors that you may be having as a result of the malice of matriarchy. And so I want you to take these reflections very seriously. Do you have resentment for your assignment as a mother? Donnie, he brought up a good point that many of us as mothers may be having resentment for our assignment as a mother. Before he said that, I had never thought about it in that way. And so that's a deep question for us to ask ourselves as mothers, as women who have that ability and that responsibility to nurture. Do you have a resentment for your assignment as a mother? And so another point that he brought up was, you love the baby, but do you love the life that comes with the baby? And this is a judgment-free zone. The only way you're going to get free, the only way that you're going to start to move forward in your life is to tell the truth. And whether the truth is pretty, ugly, or something in between, just tell the truth. No judgment. Write the first thing that comes to your mind. If you have a trusted person that you can talk to about these things, talk to that person. I'm an advocate for therapy. If therapy has helped you, if it's something you want to try, go to therapy. Listen, uncover what needs to be uncovered so you can move forward and heal. Let's move forward. In part two of the recap, how your parent or caregivers raise you is how you were raised. And that's very important to know, because a lot of times as parents, we believe that mentality, do as I say and not as I do. But those are just words. That it doesn't really happen like that. Your children that you are raising, they will do what you do. It's important for us to talk about these things, because if you don't deal with it, you will pass it down. So those things that we see in ourselves that we don't like, our parents or caregivers dealt with the exact same thing. And so in order to prevent that from moving on to the next generation, we have to face it head on. This is a quote from Donnie. I am a man, not because of a man. Think about that. And so that's the reason for inviting him on, because I definitely wanted to get that male perspective. How have our men been affected? How are our boys being affected by the malice of matriarchy? A lot of times we talked about how that pain point for a lot of women, especially single mothers or widowed mothers, if for whatever reason that the man is not in the life of the child, that can often be a pain point. And we believe that because the man is not there, the boys are having some behavioral issues. And that can be very true. It is also true that as the mothers, as women who are very close to the children and raising them day by day, we have that influence over how they think, how they feel, and how they behave. This is mental health all in one. How you think, how you feel, how you behave. We have the influence over our children, sons included. And so we have to start thinking about how we think and feel as mothers. How is that affecting our sons? And then third, how do you shift power to the man when all you've seen is women have the power to be the boss in the family? That was another quote that Donnie spoke during part two of the conversation. And I thought it was important that we really think about. It comes into that recap, but it also be a reflection. So I would encourage you to journal that too, because some of them do go hand in hand. If you are married, and as Donnie pointed out, you've never been in a household, you've never seen a man be in power or be in authority, it could be very hard to then shift from being that submissive wife, and I know that word submissive can definitely be a trigger for some women. I am not speaking of abuse. Abuse is something different. Submission is you have a husband who is doing the right thing. He's not abusive. He's not putting his hands on you. He's not emotionally and verbally abusive. And he is trying to establish order in the family, a plan for the family. And you find yourself not able to submit to his plan and his vision for the family and work together with him to move forward. If you find yourself not able to do that, then the question is, why? So definitely want you to reflect on that. As far as reflection, do you know your primary love language? And the reason that I brought this up was because during our conversation, I talked about how as a child, I did not feel my mother's love. Even though she was doing all of these things, she made sure everything was good. We always had food on the table. She always went to work. We always made our doctor's appointment. She was always doing. She was an acts of service type of woman and words of affirmation. But for me, I found out in my adulthood that my primary love language is quality time. And so although she was doing these other things to show her love or communicate her love, I did not feel that love. And so we just talked about how it's important as mothers to know our love language, how we receive love, and then to do some exploring to see what our children's primary love language is, so that we can communicate that love to each other. We don't want to give the love that we think someone should get. We want to give them what is beneficial to them. And so we brought that up. Definitely, if you don't know your primary love language, I would definitely recommend that book, The 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman. And then there's also a short version form where you can do an assessment online and find out what your primary love language is. You want to give your children the love that they need, not the love that you believe they should get. And then you would see some improvement in your relationships with your children. For mothers with sons, did you realize you have great influence over your son's behavior? So that's for my mothers with sons. You know, we talked about that pain point of not having your son's father in your life. Sometimes we can focus all of that energy and all that negativity towards the father not being there as being the reason why your son's behavior is not what you believe it should be. But the truth is that you have that influence over your son's behavior. So let's start to focus on what we can change and what we can do as mothers. Do you have a challenge relinquishing control in your relationships? And if the answer is yes, then why? I also challenge that if the answer is no, I want to know why, because then we can compare and see what are some of those social factors, environmental factors, life experiences that have made it easy for you to submit to your husband or not submit to your husband. That's really what we were talking about when we were referring to this relinquishing control when we were talking in part 2 of that conversation. So I have a prayer for the malice of matriarchy, for those who know that you have been affected by the malice of matriarchy. Either you were raised, how you were treated is how your parents were raised too. So how your parents raised you, your caregivers raised you, is how they were raised. And so if you identify with any part of the malice of matriarchy from your parents, from your mother figure, and then you see those things in yourself. I'm preaching to the choir. I have seen the malice of matriarchy in myself, and I don't want it to continue in me. And so this is a prayer really that I've said to myself and that I want to share, because I know that feeling of, God, something is wrong. I don't want these behaviors that are showing up and manifesting in me to continue and be passed on through my children. So this is a prayer for anybody who wants to uproot that malice of matriarchy. So, Father, I am sorry for being malice to myself and my family. Please forgive me. I choose to forgive myself for yelling, belittling, making sarcastic remarks, allowing anger and rage to control me, and displaying hatred towards myself and my family. I choose to forgive the women in my life who injured me spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically, and socially due to unhealed pain and trauma. Today, I choose to allow you to heal my heart so that I do not continue to pass down unhealthy behaviors to my children and the generations to come. I choose to use the knowledge, power, and authority you have given me to change the trajectory of my life, family, and legacy. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. So that's it. That is our recap and reflections for our conversation on the malice of matriarchy. And I want to once again thank Mr. Donnie D.B. Reed for coming and just sharing his knowledge about his life and his story with his mother and his great grandmother to give that male perspective to this conversation. And so, hey, please engage with us on social media. Let us know what you think about this conversation. We've all had different experiences with our mothers and our mother figures in our life. And I want to know, how has the malice of matriarchy showed up in your life? How has that affected you as a man, as a woman, as a mother, as a father, as a friend? How has the malice of matriarchy affected you? You can follow me on Facebook, on Instagram, go to my YouTube channel where you can find these episodes of Restore Hearts exclusively on my channel. Also, you can follow me on TikTok, follow me on Clubhouse, so we can continue this conversation on the malice of matriarchy. I can't wait to hear what your responses are to this topic. Don't forget, you can pre-order your books today. The information is all over this broadcast. So support. And don't forget that if you're being educated, if you're being empowered by this broadcast, then consider being a one-time or monthly sponsor of this show. All gifts are appreciated and are greatly valued. I will see you next time. Bye-bye.